start our working session. First on our agenda is a discussion, just a reminder before we get into it, this is not a voting session, we won't take any action. It's a discussion. If we reach some consensus, the city staff can take action. Otherwise, it's just for speaking. We have nuisance properties on here. Neil, I think you asked that this be added, so maybe I guess I'll turn it over to you with where your thoughts were.
Well, when you drive around, I feel that there's 6 or 8 that are needing some attention. I guess the bottom line is we've kind of talked about this a year or two, and there's a couple that they don't seem to be getting cleaned up. The driveway keeps getting fuller and fuller of cars, bicycles, snow blowers. How can we achieve the objective?
So a couple of things, maybe a year or two ago, we went citywide. Each officer had their own area. We went citywide, addressed any nuisances. I think one of the properties that you're talking about down on Minnesota Street specifically, that property actually cleaned up quite a bit through that. The problem is with some of these properties, and that one's one of them, clutter in the yard is not necessarily a nuisance. I drove by there and I've actually talked with the owner.
Well, every neighbor's put up a fence. So that kind of tells you one thing.
Well, I will say that not from anything here in the city, but from my primary job, I happen to know there are other issues with that house.
Yes. So
That may need resolving also.
So here's, those issues are, I'm guessing you saw some stuff come through, but, with that particular property, I just talked with him the other day again. And whenever you talk with him, I'm working on it. I've told him, I said, you've been telling me you're working on it for a while, and he does. I mean, because when I first went over there and we addressed it, it was a lot worse than it is even now. I don't necessarily disagree as far as the fences go. Here's the problem with the fences. It reduces our sight lines into some of that property. So things that the neighbors see, we don't or we can't. Unless you specifically drive through looking at that, and I just saw this the other day. You'd never know that there's a go-kart sitting on top of a lean-to or some other structure in the back. But you have to drive by on the street behind that, look through other people's yards and in between homes to see those things. So those fences, do that. Nuisance properties, after we went through town, we've largely addressed on a complaint basis. Because there's some properties, if your neighbor has a tire, you may not care about the tire. If you have 50 tires in your yard, your neighbors may care about the 50 tires. They make that complaint, we address that to get that cleaned up.
Well, there's a property on, and so, to notice some of these properties, you gotta drive through the alleys. And I do that from time to time. And, let's see, I believe the street is Wendell, and the alley comes out on,
It comes out on Mill Street.
yep, Mill on one end and,
Wendell on the other, yeah.
yeah, Wendell on the other.
Are we talking between Wendell and Hudson?
Well,
Are you
that's-
talking,
No, the alley behind Hudson.
Wendell, and then the next street is Mill Street.
yeah, are you talking the house with the surplus of cars
It's got 4 to 6 cars that you can see from the street,
on Hudson?
and another 4 to 6, and some are like half a car. So you know that.
Oh, is that the one that put the half a car on the side of their garage too, or something?
It's way too many, and you know that they aren't licensed. I don't know if he makes 1 out of 2, or if he's body guy or what's going on, but, you know, he's not a business like Bob Nelson or,
Well, no, and where he's at, he couldn't have an auto repair business
No.
anyways. I believe that would be a direct violation of zoning.
I mean, he can do one or two as a hobby, but by the ordinance, they're supposed to be licensed and operational unless you got the motor out of it and your, or rear end, or,
Do we have
He
any-
does all of them as a hobby.
but how many cars can you have tore apart in your backyard?
I don't know.
I'm still trying to picture the location.
Me
It's
too,
on
when I
Hudson.
was on Hudson. I'm like, what?
Hudson?
I know the property you're talking about, because when
If you,
we've addressed it before when we've gotten complaints. The thing is, and this is the hard part, Neil, is, you know,
the neighbors aren't complaining, I know,
correct.
because I know the one neighbor is the older guy, and he said, I don't want to cause trouble. They treat me pretty good. Well, that doesn't mean it's not an eyesore and not complying with the ordinances.
So I guess I'm just thinking, if we go back, Paul, you talked about how you split everything up into quadrants. At that time, you said there were 18 properties that you guys identified. Were all of those 18 cleaned up, or did we cite any of those? And are we checking in and following up?
I'd have to check. Because when was that, Sean?
Well, that was at least, while I was still on council before, so it was over 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, that was late 18 into early 19.
Yeah.
I believe it's my understanding from my staff that most of those were brought into compliance. I don't know that any had to have a citation issued,
Okay.
but like everything else, you know, you get that piece of furniture, that car, that whatever else, and you move it to your backyard, or, you know, I saw one on Stearns. It's a single, and this is the thing, when it comes to nuisance enforcement, this is why we look at it on a complaint basis. There's a, you know, it was down in the area for a different reason, driving through the area, here's a vehicle with a bumper off, sitting back behind it, you know, not currently registered and licensed. By city ordinance, is that a nuisance, you know, and is that a violation of the nuisance ordinance? It is.
It is, yeah.
You know, but there's also, you know, at times we've had kind of that mixed message as far as, you know, telling people what they can and can't do on their property. And you know, is one car an issue? 30 cars certainly is. Is one car an issue to address, not address? And, you know, that's why we largely do it when we see those, you know, significant properties. And we got 6 to 8 of them, you know.
Well, I can't believe our previous mayor is back to our neighbor, the absolute disaster. And that would be Mr. Olson that ran for mayor.
His parents, yeah.
Well, no, they bought Clusters. So he's in the
He's in the house.
house on Stearns.
Yeah.
But the eyesore is in the back.
It's not that great in the front either.
Well, no, it's not, I mean,
I walk by there a lot.
I don't know. It's nice to think that we'd have a lovely, well-groomed town. And I mean, it starts with our downtown. You drive through the alley and almost every business has trees that are growing 4 feet high in a crack in the tar. And nobody cuts them off or takes pride in their building, and I guess I wasn't raised that way.
Yeah, it would be nice to start sending some letters to some of the businesses downtown, things like that. Like XL probably, they just don't know.
They took care of theirs.
Okay.
Theirs is looking good. I don't know. I think somebody complained, or they got a letter.
Well, and some of the things with the businesses,
Sure.
like bikes and things, you know, they have
Yeah.
families with kids who are living in the apartments above them and they don't have anywhere else to put.
I mean, yeah, it's tough.
So I think it's
You got a 2-wheel trailer and you got you know, and your garage is full, where do you put your wheelbarrow? I mean, I understand, you know, but things can be put away neatly and backed up in your rear corner that nobody really,
Yeah.
it looks like it belongs there.
Would it be, I know it's technically possible, so I'm just gonna throw this out there for the sake of seeing how it sounds when it comes out of my mouth maybe, but to have like a submission form on our website, nuisance property notification.
No, I think that's a good idea. You know, I've talked with Kristen a lot about, you know, when we get a free moment, to sit down and kind of revamp the PD site, and those types of things would be, you know, perfect for doing that. You know, if you see these things, to notify us. Because the tough part is, if we see some of these in the backyards, you're not gonna know. And I agree with the alleys.
Yeah, they're pretty eye-opening.
The thing about the alleys is, from the business owners I've talked to, is they're not aware if they're supposed to take care of them, where's Public Works?
No.
So,
on the building.
So it'd be almost, best if somehow we could get the information out to the business owners,
Well-
whose responsibility is it?
Maybe the mayor wants to write this in his
Because the
weekly letter.
responsibility.
Are you saying the mayor has to start doing his weekly letter?
Well, you've been slacking off. I'm wondering if I need to help you. We all think that.
I miss it.
Maybe asking,
People get
you
busy.
know, if you have a problem with your neighbor and you think, do a formal complaint and,
Yeah.
Yeah, well, let's see if we can get that up and,
Do you have and we can put it on the Facebook page and, you know, city's website too.
yeah. Kristen, are you eavesdropping on us? Can you come out here?
If she's listening.
Do you have that list of 6 to 8, Neil, and we can address it?
yeah, I got a bunch of ones I can give to you.
Yes.
How much have you been eavesdropping on us? I mean, dutifully paying attention.
A bit.
How hard would it be to get a form set up on our website, like a submit a complaint or submit a concern button where you can click on it and then just type in like, hey, my neighbor's got a bunch of stuff on their yard?
Well, I do actually already have a page up there that's report a concern.
Okay?
So, like, it's mainly, how it was set up was, to report like, you know, street lights out, any concerns like that, but I have actually been getting mostly neighbor complaints from it. So,
There we are.
Front yard.
trailers, junk in the yard, so people are, I don't think many people know about it, but the people that do are using it as a complaint form.
They put it in a column that.
And so whenever they submit that, it gets emailed directly to me, and then I forward it on to whoever it should go to from there.
And these forms are signed.
No, they're not signed.
They don't have to be.
Yeah, it's,
I think a complaint should be signed.
I agree.
I really do for,
I disagree with that.
it's really not.
You're gonna get less.
otherwise you can get somebody that doesn't like somebody and,
You're just gonna get
But I think
battle one.
that the form itself, though, is less about making a complaint, and it's more about saying, hey, I'm seeing this.
Right.
Because ultimately, it'll be up to the officers who go out there to take a look at it and say,
Yeah.
hey, there is an issue here, or, you know what? It's a mess, but being a mess isn't a violation of the ordinance. The vehicles are all operable, they're all licensed, they're all registered, insured. You know, yes, they've got, you know, power wheels in the front yard and stuff just laying around. Or, yeah, there's a legitimate thing and they can take the action
I mean,
towards that.
some are like the vehicles or trailers or
Lot machines,
tires,
Minnesota Street,
piled up,
Pine in Minnesota.
grass ain't being mowed because all those junk is in the yard.
I think an anonymous.
There's a big before you
It was before, yeah.
Yeah,
So, hold on.
let's clear it out.
I think going back to the signing part, I like the idea of having a signature component. You're never gonna be able to enforce that on the website. But I also think that it means the more information you put in, if you put in your name, your phone number, and if you're willing to sign all of that, you're gonna take it 10 times more serious than a generic one that comes in with nothing.
I'll have to take a look, but I do have it set up on the website where it does ask for name, phone number,
Yeah.
email address, but I'll have to double check, but I have had people put in other people's names.
Yeah.
It doesn't require it to double check
Oh, boy.
that it's an actual name, it just double checks that the field is filled.
Well, and that's the problem with the internet, how do you get it?
Yeah, there's no way to, with the online option, there's no way to actually guarantee, like whoever
Yeah.
writes, whoever's name is down is what is the person
Yeah.
that
So
is.
if
They
I,
can give an IP address with everything, but I personally don't have the resources to look into.
Right, so I could fill one out and say,
I'm John.
Ken Olson's neighbor.
Yeah.
Well, indirectly I am, but we're about 6 streets apart.
Yeah,
I think an anonymous tip is fine in that, because, I mean, they're just gonna drive by, and if there's nothing there, it's not like they're gonna harass them, you know? I mean, if there's nothing there, there's nothing there. So people could be making false complaints all they want, but doesn't matter. It's not really gonna affect that person.
I will say we try not to harass people.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying.
We talk with them. Is there a way, Kristen? Because I'm thinking, to kind of couple what you're saying, Sean, with, what the intent is, of putting a specific form on the PD's page, right? To say, if you've got a complaint about anything, related ordinances, criminal, whatever, that you could do that, but that in order to submit the form, you have to submit your name and phone number, but you can still remain anonymous, in that if you put on there you want to remain anonymous, we're not going to disclose who you are. But it gives us that opportunity to call them and say, okay, can you explain for me what you're seeing? Because let's face it, we put that out there, people are gonna be like, my neighbor's yard's a mess. Okay. If I can call and talk to you and you can say, well, this is what's in my neighbor's yard, or this is, what's going on, this neighbor has a chicken, whatever. Then we at
look,
least,
they're in town. You can listen to a voicemail I got last week, I'm waiting for follow-up information.
I was wondering where that went, that's why I said that.
I'd be happy to address the chicken issue.
We can't for another few months.
Oh, look at the time.
It looked like Neil was making us dinner.
Are you thinking
But I mean-
an electronic
That happened
form,
in Alva.
or
Yeah.
like, because I know there's the PDF form I have out there. There's a complaint form on the PD page. That's
Well,
a PDF.
No, this would be like a form, like email me forms or whatever we're currently using.
Yeah,
That would, they could fill in and it would state, all complaints need to be signed, however, you may remain anonymous as far as, disclosure beyond this. Something as simple as saying, we're doing this so that the officer can reach out to you to find out more on your
Yeah.
complaint.
So I'm just thinking, like, I didn't even know I didn't know what that red button did.
Zach, the red button on the main page, it does lead to a report of concern. And
Right.
that does lead to the form to fill out.
So is there a way to just put that like underneath the calendar as an actual like visible button so you don't have to hover over it to see it?
That would be contacting the developers
Okay?
and having them redo or do some redesigns, and I'm not sure if there would be a cost to that or not.
Yeah, well, it's.
Or we're paying a retainer.
I think it's.
So, one thing though that I think would be helpful is that if the email's just going to you, to see, can that go to
Yeah, I can switch
all of
it
the department heads?
You can do a drop-down list on what area it's
Should be
for
going to,
for
yeah.
that person.
But that requires the person to actually click the right thing.
to, yeah.
So my concern is not that you would distribute it right away, but if you're on vacation and somebody reports on here, oh, my water main broke, because they don't call the city. And then you don't get back for a week, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, hey, look, John Doe's water main broke. Ron, do you want to go out to his house and fix it?
So I can look into that. I think I should be able to do it.
Okay.
It's just when I originally set it up, like, I didn't know how much it was gonna get used or who to mainly put it, so I just put it as myself. And it's not used too often, like I maybe get like probably less than one a month.
Sure. But I think it would be
I can look into it and see if I
helpful.
can, yeah, I can look into it and see if I can send it to more than one email, but then in that case, they would be getting every report. So like if I set one up for the PD, I would just send that to Paul or if
Missy.
you want, yeah, Melissa.
Yeah.
So yeah, whichever email you would want, I would set that up to go straight to them, probably not even go to me at all. But
I would just think, I mean, the simpler you can make it, the better, because the more steps you have, the more chances are somebody's gonna screw it up.
Yeah.
But I think it'd be helpful to have an actual button on here where you could say, submit a concern, and then have it on sort of the bottom of every page where you have the buttons for the main pages. Why not just have one underneath there? There it is. Because then it gives people an easy way where you're not calling Stearns County Dispatch and saying, I have a complaint in the city of Painesville. And now we're generating a report and no. If we can do it this way, it might alleviate some concerns. And then maybe it's time to divvy up the city again into quadrants and do another list.
Well, that's why I said, you've got that list especially, that we can work on that, you know.
And I-
This is about the time because people are out cleaning their yards
Yep.
before winter, so.
And I think I made this like when we first talked, a good month, 6 weeks ago. And I got one on here, I drove by the other day, it really is not an eyesore anymore. And I believe people, 209 Garfield, next to the old Rest Haven. Midsummer, it looked like it was, nobody'd ever live in it again. There's people living in it, the grass is cut, I was impressed.
Maybe it's new owners.
You know which house I mean?
Yeah, right next to like the old,
It's a lower one.
Yeah, it was vacant and the grass was that high most of the summer. Drive by right now, it don't look, the whole thing is mowed and looks like somebody's probably in there, and I was impressed.
well, yeah, and I think that's one thing to know or to differentiate too within the nuisance stuff. Like the PD's not enforcing lawn, that's public works. You know, if we start seeing lawns and weeds and,
Yeah.
actually, I think the mayor's the weed inspector, if I remember right. But
But it's still
it's
unsightly
actually,
conditions.
it's absolute eyesore, but if we get one of those complaints in, that's where I think it's helpful to know, you know, and no matter who it goes to, we'll forward it to the correct
I
department.
mean, it's just like the alleys downtown with all the shrubs growing up and the side of PJ's, and you can go on and on and on. Same way, the old Black Saucer, shrubs growing up all around the whole building. I mean, come on.
So, take like 617 Coronas, which we walk past regularly.
That's on my list.
Yeah, I figured it would be.
Almost looks like a tear down.
You can't see the house to know if it's a tear down.
Well, I know, it's so overgrown and so nasty.
Got a lot of, it's like kitty corner from the splash pad, basically.
Okay.
It's a couple houses down from the corner, but the grass is really long, and the bigger thing is, it's not that the grass is there, it's that all of the trees and the shrubs and everything like that is so overgrown, which you can't exactly go into trim. And I'm thinking that may then cross the line into nuisance rather than just lawn mowing. For things that can't be remedied with a public works guy in 30 minutes with a lawnmower.
And I don't know, our building inspector, I mean, what is the condition of the house?
It's been vacant for as long as I know.
Are taxes being paid on that property?
Yeah.
From what we know, the gentleman that used to live there has passed on, and it's been left to the family, and the family has decided to let it probably go. There is some certified expenses that will be certified to their taxes. We're probably thinking that that's going to end up in maybe a tax forfeiture. We'd have to go through the courts to be able to get on the property, to be able to inspect the home, to see if it's condemnable, and go through that whole process, kind of like what we did with
So is it-
land property.
So until it's available for $1, it's just what it is.
617 Cronus?
Unless we can go through the process, like we did with the plants or the one that now Mr. Larson has put a new home on.
Well,
That's the process we had to
This
go
would be the next one on the list,
through. Okay.
I would think.
So are you thinking that you maybe want to proceed with something on that through the building department?
I think it would be worth looking at what our options are.
Okay.
Have Brad take a look at it anyway.
Yep.
Okay.
Uh,
And then I wrote down, are you thinking that you want something to come from City Hall regarding the downtown commercial properties, regarding the alleys and, you know, getting that spelled out, who's in charge of taking care of the backs of the buildings and the crevices and those types of things to those property owners?
And a nice letter would probably suffice to initially anyhow.
Okay.
Especially if, like Paul said, a lot are unaware and don't think it's,
So going off of what you were saying, Neil, about some of the Blakeville properties around town, when we walked through Central Avenue property
yes.
last week, and we saw those two buildings that were definitely dangerous, I guess if we're gonna go with addressing one issue, the whole thing should be.
Well, that should probably be on the list. I mean,
It should be
I hate to
close to the
see
top.
a kid fall through that roof or something.
Or play around in that semi
Being killed.
with the roof shade off.
At the properties that were toured last week.
Hartman's.
I mean,
Yeah, there's some dangerous, I could see a kid falling through that roof or something. That wouldn't be pretty.
Well,
No, that's true.
there's, the thing that I would like to address as far as nuisance I mean, there's a difference between something that is an actual hazard and something that people just don't like, you know, because I got a lot of emails about different properties in town, and some of the things, they're not dangerous, they just don't like them. And that's not something I feel is our place to, you know, I mean, some people might want,
We really don't want to get
well, right, I mean, but.
established neighborhood squabbles. We don't want to.
No, but you know,
Yeah, neither, I
but
guess.
somebody, you know, some people, I understand there are certain rules with, you know, what can grow because of sightlines and things like that, but some people might want really high hedges, you know, and I mean, I don't have any hedges, but who are, you know, I know people who prefer them a certain way or whatever, and I don't think that we can go in and say, well, I know there's an ordinance regarding grass, but other things, if it's not in anybody's sightlines, are we really gonna go in and say, this is overgrown, this is that, I mean, that might be how they want it, you know, I don't know. I feel like we can start nitpicking at things like that, and especially, you know, there are things where people talked about, I did have a few emails about cars being parked on grass and how some cities have ordinances against that, but I kind of like what we have as far as if it's an operable, you know, machine, that's a different thing, because I know people who have really nice yards, but they will occasionally have like a grad party or something, and they'll have people park on their yard.
Well, you have
You know.
to sometimes park in, especially over the winter months.
Yeah.
Because you can't park on the street, so you
Yeah.
have to park in your
Yeah.
yard.
So I don't know if we want to get into,
No,
you know.
that's not what we're talking.
Right,
They gotta be running and licensed and.
I just wanted to be clear about it because of some of the emails that I've gotten. I don't feel that, I understand where the people are coming from, especially if they live right there. You know, but I don't feel that it's our place to tell people when it's their property, you know, as long as it's not something that's endangering a nearby property, or, you know, in the cases of some of the properties we've seen recently, it's endangering some, like, especially if it's along the waterfront, or, you know, where there are like long-reaching impacts of those things. Otherwise, I'm like, well, I don't.
I think we should distinguish between an eyesore and a property that is unsafe,
Yes. that's
such
what I'm saying.
as,
Danger versus just somebody's.
right, like the Hartman property with those two buildings that are ready to fall down if anyone walked in them, is a lot different than an eyesore of somebody's, you know, lawn
It's a
that's
hazard.
cut,
Yeah.
or
I'm
not cut.
surprised their
Yeah,
insurance
dangerous
company has-
properties or buildings or whatever is different than,
or the company just doesn't know.
Or companies.
Well, I think we've got a good plan of adding or improving on the submission form on the website. Neil, you'll get your list to Paul, so you can start looking at those. And we can just start evaluating and throw this on the agenda in a month or so for review. Does that work?
And I encourage all the council members to drive around, take a look, drive through some alleys, open your eyes and see what's out there.
No. All right, thanks, Kristen. We'll move on then to the discussion about food trucks.
Well, we got one that seems to be open for business, almost every night, and they live down by me, and the food truck is parked in the front lawn. Actually, with all the rain we had, there's tracks about that deep going into their front yard. I can't be 100% certain, but one person told me that the food's being prepared inside the house and brought out to a tent, and it's not all made in the truck. And I don't know how that works for your food license and all this. That's why I was wishing Bill would be here. How do other towns handle this? And, you know, I said, well, we don't have any regulations on the book for food trucks. do we?
No, and I had that same problem too, and they're supposed to be, the comments I've gotten kind of on it too, is we don't allow other businesses in residential areas. And this is being, and it's, I mean, you can't run a business in our residential area, and they're running a business out of there.
I mean, you look at Facebook and everybody loves the food and, oh, this is the man to die for and blah, blah, blah. It's the reason I hate Facebook, but sometimes I abuse myself when I can't sleep. But anyhow,
Yeah, and what Tart said is Jimmy's Pizza was looking at bringing one in town and parking it.
I mean, yeah, it's pretty soon you're gonna have 10 food trucks.
So we need to have some kind of an ordinance with
And
rules and.
I don't think it's fair to
permit
the 3 restaurants that we have.
And we need a permit system.
In physical buildings paying property taxes.
When we're going under the radar of inspection from Stearns County, I'm not quite sure what department it's under.
Should be under the health department.
Health Department,
Yeah.
right. So if they're making it in their house, you don't know what's going on in there, whereas some of the restaurants around town are going to have their premises inspected by the Stearns County Department of Health.
They all got commercial kitchens.
Right, so, right, I think that's where we should have it set up where they can't run it out of their house unless it's been approved by, number one, zoning, and number two, the Stearns County Department of Health.
Yeah, if they were cooking in their house, then their house would have to be
No.
inspected.
Yeah, exactly, and zoned.
They run at least one night a week at the Lutheran Church.
And that's,
Which I really don't have a problem because that's probably youth night.
and it's also private property.
Right.
And it is a parking lot.
I mean, it's the same, any food truck can go to Lewis, or I know a buyer built, trucks go up there daily, lunch break and dinner, and the employees patronize, and that's wonderful, and that's what a food truck should be.
Depending on how much they make each year, they might be covered under cottage food laws though too, which isn't the same. So, in Minnesota's got that law in the books.
Yeah, but I think the food trucks are under a separate thing.
Yeah.
I think they have
I
to
just mean
be-
as far as making food in their house, I don't know how that works.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think that's legal, I really don't. I don't.
So, I guess the point is,
Under cottage.
we've got a number of issues that have come up with this. One is operation in a residential area. And I don't like it. I'm a little bit hesitant to say you can't do it at all. Because, I mean, I wouldn't have a problem if they wanted to park on the street next to a park. You know, if there's an event going on at a park somewhere in town, that's bound to be a residential area, but put the truck out on the street and feed customers. But operating it in your front yard on a dead-end road, that I think gives traffic concerns with people trying to turn around down there.
It is.
Because it's not a wide area to turn your car
No,
around.
it's not.
It brings a lot more traffic to South Street.
Yeah, and there are a number of younger kids down there, if I remember right.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Now the bus does 2 or 3 stops every morning.
yeah. So that, I have safety concerns for that. Beyond that.
I see what you're saying, you know, let's say, I'm gonna have a 75th birthday party and I want the food truck. Well, you know, and I maybe, permit to
I was gonna say, get a permit for special.
allow
events.
certain things like that, that's not a problem. But to be open nightly, creating traffic, and like the mayor just said, I think we need to put a handle on that.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think,
Get more coming into town.
Well, same thing like you said, if something going on at Gazebo Park and they want the
Yeah.
permit, and maybe there's a little fee for this permit.
So I have a question about that. Say for instance, earlier this year, there was a car show in town here. Would those food trucks need to get a permit just to come to town then? And that's kind
Well,
of
the
slippery
chamber
slope.
brought them in, so the chamber would probably get some kind of permit for them or something.
And along with that, the restaurant owner in town here had a big problem with food trucks being here.
Mostly the location.
Well, it was more so that they were taking away your business.
I mean, I have that concern also. We have 3 establishments paying property taxes, working out of a building. When you start in with food trucks on every other corner, it's not gonna, you know,
But these 3 establishments also can sell alcohol where the food trucks can't.
correct.
So that's where they could make up for their revenue. If somebody wants a burger and don't drink, maybe they want to go to a food truck. If to those that want to have a couple beers and a burger, there's another option for them.
From what I understand now is to have a food truck in town, I mean, as long as it's on private property, you can do it.
It can be on a public street, they can do it.
Or both,
We
yeah.
have no rules right now.
I know other cities have ordinances, like you have to be a certain number of feet away from an
That's
establishment.
what I was gonna say from another restaurant,
Is
because
that
she's so
something
far
you look
away.
at or want to look at?
You don't know.
Yeah, I think we should make it difficult for them, because I think it's
Right.
kind of a needed,
But I think it.
it's the future. I mean, and we can't say you have to be so many feet away, because if somebody wanted to take the old Color Max building or the
Yeah.
laundromat and turn it into a restaurant, we would say more power to you.
Right. I just didn't know if that was a way of addressing some of the concerns that the restaurant owners in town have, but.
But that's competition.
Yeah, that's the
I'm just saying.
Good food, good price, good service, they're gonna come back.
I'm gonna say government regulation that prohibits business, that might be socialism or, you know, I'm just saying.
Surely.
So-
All right.
Oh,
No, I think too, it's, is there, I don't know if there, I haven't time to look into it, but what's the difference between, food trucks and like ice cream trucks? Or, it's like, do they have to keep moving? What do you?
one is a meal and one is a dessert.
I'm aware of the difference between food and ice cream truck. I'm just saying, as far as.
I
the
don't
location
know
goes.
that I agree on that distinction.
Yeah, right, like, do you have to keep moving? Do you have to, you know what I mean?
I just think we do need to have some rules,
Yeah.
because there are gonna be more of them.
I can
And it
see.
is the future, but then
Yeah.
we need to have like permits when you come into town or,
So let me just give you a little bit of history. I pulled the food truck file.
Yeah.
And we discussed this in length in 2014,
Yeah, we do.
okay? Based on some of the same exact reasons that you guys have all just discussed. Upset restaurant owners, location, brick and mortar versus something on wheels, taxes, licensing, location, traffic, all of that. At that time, we decided we weren't going to do anything. It was brought back up in May of 2020. And we, at that time, noted back in 14 that the council consented that they were not going to regulate food trucks. So currently in the books, we do not have a food truck ordinance.
Nope.
That food trucks are not going to go away.
Nope.
League of Minnesota Cities, has had articles on them. To date, when people call City Hall, this is what I tell them. We don't have an ordinance that regulates food trucks. Your license needs to be held through the county or the state. You would need to show those licenses if you are inspected or if anybody wants to see them. We would prefer you to be on private property. We do not want you on the public street due to traffic, due to people standing in line. It's just a hazard. So that's why they've been in Central Care parking lot. They've been in the Lamb parking lot. I believe they've been up in Industrial Park. I believe there was some talk about being in the Shopko parking lot. They've been on the Painesville Lutheran Church parking lot. We want them to be on private property so that they have permission from that property owner. The food trucks that are here during the street closures, we believe that they've worked them out with whoever's hosting that event. Those streets are closed. The city has no say in who they bring in. At you know, for many, many years, the chamber offered just local nonprofits to do little food cart trailer things. Earlier on, even before 2014, we did have an ice cream truck in town. It ran up Coronas and Washburn and Coronas Court and
Well,
Stearns.
wasn't it more of a bicycle?
Yeah, it was like a little,
Pedal thing.
yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So they're not going away, but we currently are not licensing them, we're not permitting them, and we do not have an ordinance on the books.
Maybe they should
I think we should start
get a yearly
with,
license and, but still, I don't know if they should be operating
Yeah,
out
they
of
should be operating on the.
especially if they are using the home kitchen.
I think if we give them a permit, then they can show us that they have been inspected by the health and have that permit from them.
All of that stuff should be posted on their.
On their vehicle, yeah.
So,
The things I'd like to see, not in residential,
Except for special events.
except for, yeah, special events, something like that. Maybe that could be permitted, you know,
Yeah.
maybe that could be something.
Okay.
I don't know that I like the idea of requiring a permit for just every day. I also don't mind the thought of, if they want to park on a street downtown where all of the customers can line up on the sidewalk without stepping into the street, so like in front of the library. If they can fit into a parking spot in front of the library, and all of their customers can line up on the street, more power to you. You're fitting into a parking spot, yeah, you can line up on the sidewalk, I mean.
that's what they do at Nicollet Mall downtown.
Right, they do
There's
that.
15 food trucks where they can walk down the sidewalk.
And all of those restaurants are still doing fine. I mean, it's healthy competition.
Yeah, that's,
Well, maybe we should designate an area like by Gazebo Park where they can operate out of.
But,
That would eliminate the home kitchen.
but why would we want to designate, I mean, why would we want to say, you can only go here?
But then,
That's not the free market.
because then if we have like 4 or 5 of them and they're all there, then that's,
That's fine.
is it traffic wise?
Residential, it becomes.
I think we should start off,
Wise, not competition wise.
small. And if we're gonna have an ordinance, it should be not in a residential area and properly licensed through the Stearns County. And leave it at that and see how that works.
Yeah.
And tweak it as we go along.
Jennifer, I'm going to say something that I'm going to regret in about 30 days.
Oh dear.
Say it.
Put it on policies and procedures.
I'm just wondering about some type of license in order to,
operate the
it
city.
would help dictate, you know, maybe, so we don't end up with 10 of them in this town.
What's wrong?
And it would create a little revenue when we're so revenue short. I mean, it doesn't have to be $3,000, but 500 might not be out of the line. You want to operate in our town? Here's where you would permit.
I just, you know, the thing with that is, when I think about it, I think Tarek and I talked about this a while back, about food trucks. I mean, I can see a day where, you know, somebody, whether it's a chamber or otherwise, say, you know what? We're gonna bring in food trucks. We're gonna bring in, the Wings, which is the Wings one from St. Cloud.
Yep.
And, you know, we're gonna have a food truck event here to bring people into the community, to bring people in and do this, and requiring a permit, now we're, you know.
You could charge each one $500 to come.
We're not gonna do it.
So, I mean, I think that's one of those things we have to look at. It's like, I think there's some opportunity here to create something fun in a small community,
Yeah.
to get something like that. I mean, we've got 3 in town already.
I think there should be an incentive along with fixing up some of the holes, like, you know, parked on a lawn somewhere, but I think it should also act as an incentive, because I think the residents in here would appreciate it.
So this is gonna pose another problem in a couple of years, when the state baseball tournament comes in here in 24 and 25, that season. It's gonna bring a lot of people to town, along with those people being hungry, and food trucks.
And you darn well know there are going to be food trucks.
And they'll be in that parking lot at the school.
Yep.
Yeah, they will.
Okay?
Well, that's up to the school to decide, because they do sell food and beer at the stadium.
But that's where the school can say, you're not going to make competing food. We're doing hot dogs. If you want to do tacos and sushi or whatever else.
Or
go ahead.
wings, or.
Yeah.
Or if, two of them want to do hot dogs, they better make sure their
And that
hot
would
dogs
be
are
up to
better.
And at that point,
That's how it works,
maybe the
you know?
guy at Shopko would allow them to set up there, and people want to drive across or walk across the street.
Well, they could just park on the street next to the field.
And as somebody
There you
who
go.
was at a very, very long exhausting baseball tournament this past summer, you want to sit down.
I-
So I don't think everyone is going to want to do the food truck. Some people are going to want to go to the restaurants and sit down because it's hot and long and tiring. So, I mean, I don't,
Air conditioning, yeah.
yes.
Well,
Plus you can drink.
let's bring it to policies. We'll spend a few hours fighting it out there.
So are you thinking that we should just dig up maybe what we had before and we'll start with that language?
Can
We
we,
got what we had before, and we'll, I think, hit a few points of what we want to start with, and then say, hey, Bill, draw it up, and,
can we check with the neighboring towns or,
See if anybody
you
else.
know, that,
Imagine
Well,
St.
you know,
Cloud has one.
Cold Spring.
Buffalo has one. I know that for sure. Buffalo. I don't know if the other neighboring towns have one. Minneapolis for sure does. That I don't know either. I don't have access to listserv to just get that. I would have to physically go on everybody's website and try to find the ordinance. So somebody that has access to listserv, they could maybe find out. Tark, do you have that?
Bill should know.
yeah. And we can get it through the
Spend
league.
that money.
I'll write to the league right now.
Yeah, I was gonna say the league would have it, maybe.
Could I get a copy of those notes from 2014 and 2020 for policies and procedures?
Yeah, it just has, it's an email from Bill Spooner to Renee. It doesn't really have the notes. I'd have to go back to the council meetings to get those. I mean, I can try to find them.
No,
On what
that's
was
okay.
discussed.
You gave us a heads up, but I just wanted a hard copy so I could,
Yeah, let me see if I can find the minutes from
Okay.
2014.
I think the main priority should be like, traffic and safety, rather than worrying too much about, because if they are licensed through the state, then they should have their information on the truck.
Yeah.
And,
True.
yeah. No private property or causing bottlenecks, except if there's a, special event or whatever.
We got 10 minutes left.
I know, so I'm gonna move us along.
10 minutes?
Yep. We like to keep these to an hour. So, disbanding the Public Safety Board. My position hasn't changed. It's a wasted board.
second?
We can't do any business, remember?
Does anybody object to disbanding the board? A board that doesn't meet, doesn't take any action.
let's bring that for motion for Monday's meeting then.
Okay. Well, or the next agenda, 'cause
Well, I can put it on as an update if you think it is an immediate need. Go on
Fill it
October
officially?
25th.
no, just put it on the
25th.
Even if it's a month down the road.
So 10/25, you guys will consider officially disbanding the board.
I won't be here.
I'll do it before that. We're supposed to
No,
meet
you
in
won't,
October.
we'll be recuperating.
We can get you in by Zoom.
It might still be locked up.
He might still be in the hospital on the 25th.
So potentially that board is scheduled to meet on the 26th. That agenda would go out the week of the 18th. Should we just send an email that the council
Meeting's
is considering
canceled.
disbanding the board?
They're not gonna have a quorum anyway, so what does it matter?
Except it's more for her to have to send out the agenda.
That's right. I won't be there anyway, so just cancel it.
Okay.
You won't?
No, I have something else going on that night.
Yeah, so the chair has canceled the meeting.
Yeah, good, I gotta be home, I got a guy coming to look at my truck.
There you go.
Are you selling it?
Priorities.
Yeah.
No, it's a Chevy. He's gonna put it up on the
The
list.
blue one, or?
Patty said, I can't drive for 12 weeks, she's tired of it leaking oil in the driveway, and
The little blue guy?
I had,
It's a nuisance
I
problem.
said, okay, you win, take a picture of it, do your thing. She had 12 people last night.
Which truck though? The blue one or the orange one?
Old,
City.
The old city one.
Evo truck.
I think I saw it up on the free site. You better pull over.
Want the little orange light that goes on top?
Yeah.
All right. There's nothing else.
You won't have any idea what I might replace it with.
Your property inspection, vehicle. I
Yes,
said your property
okay.
inspection vehicle.